The crimson sunset painted long shadows across the canyon as Nashuhu knelt beside the girl's broken body. Blood darkened her Comanche garments, her breath shallow as desert dust. His people and hers had warred for generations, their hatred as ancient as the stones beneath them. Yet something in her face, so young, so fierce even in unconsciousness, stirred memories of his own sister, lost in a raid many winters ago. His weathered hands hesitated above her wounds. The desert would claim her by morning if he left her. The wind riders would claim his scalp if he helped her. Could mercy survive in a land where blood feuds were sacred law? Will his act of compassion bridge two warring nations? Or will it be the final act of a condemned man? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 days earlier, Nashuhu had left his people's settlement with only his medicine pouch and knife. The drought had stretched into its second year, forcing him to venture farther from the Apache Canyon stronghold in search of water and game. As the tribe's most skilled scout, the responsibility weighed on his shoulders like the summer heat. His fingers brushed the eagle feather medicine pouch at his waist, a gift from old Hummingbird, the medicine man who had trained him since boyhood. Inside rested herbs, crystals, and sacred items that connected him to the spirit world and guided his healing hands. The pouch had saved many lives, including his own. Find the hidden paths, old Hummingbird had told him. Your eyes see what others cannot. It was this gift that had earned him his name, he who sees hidden paths. Since childhood, Nashuhu had possessed an uncanny ability to locate water where others found only dust, to spot game where hunters returned empty-handed, to read the land as clearly as others read the sky. But his gifts had come with isolation. The other young men respected him but kept their distance. Some feared his connection to the unseen world. Others envied his standing with the elders. Few sought his company around evening fires when stories were shared. Nashuhu paused atop a ridge, scanning the vast landscape. The familiar silhouette of Eagle's Head Mountain marked the boundary of Apache territory. Beyond lay the dangerous lands where Comanche war parties roamed. His people and the Comanche had fought for generations, their hatred deeper than the canyons that scarred the earth. His mind drifted to his sister, Sweetwater, taken by Comanche raiders 15 winters ago. He had been too young to protect her, then barely 10 summers old. The raiders had come before dawn, silent as mountain lions. By the time the warriors organized a pursuit, the Comanche were ghosts in the distance, Sweetwater among their captives. The memory still burned like a coal in his chest, though time had tempered his hatred into a smoldering ember. Old Hummingbird had taught him that a healer must set aside hatred to see clearly. The hand that clutches a stone cannot receive water, the old man would say. Nashuhu moved down the ridge, his moccasins finding purchase on loose shale. The land was parched, game scarce. His people needed water more than vengeance now. Movement caught his eye unusual tracks in the dust below. He crouched, studying the impressions. Horse tracks, moving fast. Too many for a hunting party. The pattern suggested warriors riding together, at least 20. Comanche. He traced his finger along the tracks. They were fresh, made since dawn. His jaw tightened. Comanche this deep in Apache territory meant only one thing: war. Rising, Nashuhu followed the tracks, moving carefully to avoid detection. The trail led toward a narrow canyon one that contained a small spring known only to the Apache. If the Comanche discovered it, his people would lose a precious water source. As the sun climbed higher, he caught sight of dust rising in the distance. The war party was moving fast, away from Apache territory now. Strange. Raiders typically. Struck quickly and returned the same way they came. These riders seemed to be fleeing by midday, Nashuhu had tracked them to the canyon's entrance. The spring lay a half-day's journey within its winding confines. He hesitated, touching his medicine pouch for guidance. Something felt wrong. The Comanche had entered the canyon but left in haste. Why? The answer would come with nightfall, as he followed the tracks deeper into the sacred canyon where his people had harvested healing herbs for generations. There, beneath the crimson sunset, he would find a broken body that would change everything. A young Comanche girl left to die by her own people. And in that moment, with blood on his hands and memories of his sister in his heart, Náshŭ would make a choice that defied generations of hatred. A choice that would test his courage, his loyalty, and ultimately, his capacity for mercy in a merciless land. The girl lay crumpled like a broken doll against the canyon wall. Her right leg bent at an unnatural angle, and a deep gash crossed her side. Blood had soaked through her buckskin dress, now stiff and dark in the fading light. Nearby lay a Comanche bow, snapped in two, the mark of a warrior fallen in disgrace, or left for dead. Nashuhu approached cautiously, knife drawn. Even wounded Comanche could be dangerous. But the girl did not stir. Her breaths came shallow and quick, her skin burning with fever when he touched her forehead. She was young, perhaps. 16 summers, with the high cheekbones and proud features of the people of the wind, as the Comanche called themselves. Around her neck hung an amulet of turquoise and silver, its craftsmanship far too fine for a common warrior. This was no ordinary girl. He turned the amulet in his fingers, recognizing symbols that marked her as the daughter of a chief or shaman. To leave such a one behind, something was deeply wrong. "What happened to you, enemy daughter?" he whispered in Apache, knowing she could not hear. The canyon was silent, except for the distant cry of a hunting hawk. Nashuhu studied the ground around her, reading the story written in the dust. Many horses had been here. The girl had fallen or been thrown from her mount. And then, inexplicably, her people had left her, among both Apache and Comanche. No warrior was left behind unless they were already dead or dying beyond hope. To abandon a chief's daughter violated every code of honor, unless Nashuhu examined her wounds more carefully. The gash in her side was clean made by a blade, not a fall. Someone had tried to kill her. His grandmother's voice came to him, telling stories by firelight of the ancient days when Apache and Comanche had been one people before the Great Division. "Blood calls to blood," she would say, "even across the chasm of hatred." Nashuhu sat back on his heels, caught between duty and compassion. By tribal law, he should leave the enemy to die or hasten her passing as an act of mercy. To help her meant betraying his people's trust. Yet he was a healer first, taught by old Hummingbird to preserve life when possible. And something about this girl, perhaps the echo of his lost sister in her face, pulled at him like an underwater current dot. The hidden spring lay half a day's journey deeper into the canyon. If he could get her there, he might save her life with the sacred water and the healing herbs that grew nearby. But carrying a wounded enemy to a secret place of his people, it was unthinkable. The spirits have placed a heavy choice before you, he murmured to himself. Night was approaching. Soon, desert predators would catch the scent of blood. The decision could not wait until morning dot, with a quiet prayer to his ancestors for understanding. Nashuhu gently lifted the girl. She was lighter than he expected, her body diminished by injury and dehydration. He arranged her carefully over his shoulder, mindful of her broken leg, and began the long walk deeper into the canyon. Stars emerged overhead as he walked, using only the silver moonlight to guide his steps. The girl moaned occasionally, but did not wake. Twice he stopped to drip precious water from his waterskin between her. Cracked lips. The weight on his back was nothing compared to the weight on his spirit. Each step took him further from the path of duty and deeper into uncertainty. By helping this Comanche girl, he risked everything: his standing among his people, his honor, perhaps his life. Yet with each painful mile, his resolve strengthened. Old Hummingbird had taught him that true healing sometimes required breaking with tradition. The way that cannot bend will eventually break, the elder had said. Near midnight, Nashuhu smelled the sweet scent of water on the dry air. The hidden spring was close. Soon he would face the consequences of his choice. But first, he would do everything in his power to save the enemy who had been abandoned by her own people. Dawn painted the canyon walls with golden light as Nashuhu knelt beside the hidden spring. Crystal clear water bubbled from between ancient stones, gathering in a small, deep pool before disappearing again beneath the earth. This was whispering water, most sacred of the Apache springs, known only to medicine people and tribal elders. To bring an outsider here, especially a Comanche, was to break the oldest taboo of his people. "Forgive me," he whispered to the spirits of the place. "Life hangs in the balance." The girl lay on a bed of soft grasses he had gathered. Her breathing remained shallow, her skin hot with fever. Nashuhu dipped his hands into the cool spring water, feeling its power flow through his fingers. The Old One said this water came from the deepest heart of Mother Earth, carrying healing magic from the beginning of time. He filled his oldest clay vessel, one that had belonged to his grandmother, with the sacred water. Then, moving with the precise care Old Hummingbird had taught him, he began cleaning the girl's wounds. The gash in her side was deep but clean. The broken leg would be more difficult. As he worked, Nashuhu sang softly medicine songs passed down through generations of healers. Songs that called to the body's own strength, that spoke to torn flesh and broken bone, urging them to remember their proper shape. When the wounds were clean, he gathered herbs that grew only near the sacred spring red root for infection, golden flower for fever, spine leaf for pain. He crushed them between smooth stones and mixed them with spring water and pine resin to make a poultice for the girl's side. The leg would need to be set. Nashuhu had done this before for injured hunters, but never for an enemy. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what must be done. "This will hurt, daughter of the wind," he said in his own language, "but it must be done." With practiced hands, he pulled the broken bone straight. Even unconscious, the girl's body stiffened, a small cry escaping her lips. Quickly, Nashuhu bound the leg with strips of wood and leather, creating a splint. That would hold the bone in place as it healed. As the morning deepened, he examined her possessions: a knife with intricate markings, the broken bow, a small pouch of pemmican. On the knife's handle, carved in Comanche symbols, was a name: Tani, daughter of the moon. "Tani," he said aloud, testing the sound. Names held power. To know someone's true name was to hold a piece of their spirit. He prepared a tea of willow, bark, and fever root, then carefully raised her head, dribbling the bitter liquid between her lips. Some ran down her chin, but she swallowed reflexively. It was enough. There was nothing more to do now but wait and pray. Nashuhu settled cross-legged beside the spring, his medicine pouch open before him. From it, he took a small bundle of sage and cedar, lighting it with his fire striker. The fragrant smoke curled upward, carrying his prayers to the ancestors. "I have broken the law of our people," he confessed to the silent canyon, "but I could not leave her to die. Guide my hands. Show me the path forward." The sun climbed higher, warming the sheltered canyon. Birds sang in the junipers that clustered near the water. In this sacred place, the drought that plagued the outer lands had not reached. Life flourished, protected by ancient magic and secrecy. Movement caught his attention: Apache scouts passing above the canyon rim. His people were searching for him. Soon he would have to report what he had found: Comanche war parties in their territory. But not yet. not until he knew whether the girl would live or die. Nashuhu looked down at Tani's face, softer now in sleep than in the rictus of pain. Enemy she might be, but in this moment she was simply a wounded soul under his care. Old Hummingbird had taught him that healing transcended the boundaries of tribe and hatred. The water knows no enemy, the elder had said. It gives life to all who drink. As the day passed, Tani's fever began to break. Her breathing deepened, growing stronger. The sacred water was working its ancient magic. By sunset, her eyes would open, and a new chapter would begin, one that neither Apache nor Comanche could have foreseen. Tani's eyes flew open as the sun touched the western canyon rim. For a moment, confusion clouded her face, then terror as she registered Nashuhu's presence. She recoiled, reaching instinctively for her knife, only to find it missing. A cry of pain escaped her as the movement jarred her broken leg. "Be still," Nashuhu said in halting Comanche, one of the few phrases he knew from listening to captured scouts. He raised his empty hands to show he meant no harm. Her dark eyes darted around the canyon, taking in the spring, the medicine, items, her splinted leg. Understanding dawned gradually on her face, followed by weariness. "Apache," she said, the word carrying generations of hatred. Nashuhu nodded. "Nashuhu," he said, touching his chest. Then he pointed to her. "Tani." Surprise flickered across her features at hearing her name. She glanced at her knife, which Nashuhu had placed nearby but out of her reach. "Water?" he asked, offering a clay cup filled from the spring. Thirst overcame caution. Tani took the cup with trembling hands and drank deeply. The effect was immediate, color returning to her face, strength flowing back into her limbs. Such was the power of the sacred spring. "Why?" she asked in Apache, the word accented but clear. Nashuhu considered the question. Why indeed had he saved an enemy? The answer came to him not in words, but in the memory of his sister's face, in old Hummingbird's teachings about the circle of life that encompassed all peoples. He gestured to her wounds, then to the spring, then to the sky. Some things transcended explanation, using gestures and the few words they shared between their languages. Nashuhu explained how he had found her abandoned, how he had carried her to this place of healing. Tani's expression shifted from suspicion to reluctant gratitude. From a nearby juniper, Nashuhu had gathered berries and young branches. He crushed the berries into the last of the water and added the tender tips of the branches, creating a fragrant tea that would strengthen her blood. As it steeped, the juniper's sharp, clean scent filled the air between them, a smell both their peoples associated with purification and protection. "Drink," he said, offering the tea. "Medicine." Tani hesitated, then accepted. Trust was a fragile thing between enemies, each sip an act of courage. "My people," she said in broken Apache, touching her chest, then sweeping her hand eastward. "Looking." Nashuhu nodded grimly. "Wind Riders?" Her eyes widened at his knowledge of the elite Comanche warrior society. "Father," she said, drawing herself up despite her injuries. "War Chief." The revelation hit Nashuhu like a stone to the chest. Not just any Comanche girl, but the daughter of the most feared war leader of the Wind Riders. If she died in his care, no Apache would be safe for 100 miles. If she lived and told of the sacred spring ... Thnee seemed to read his thoughts. "Not tell," she said, struggling with the Apache words. "Honor debt, life for life." Among both their peoples, such a debt was sacred. To save a life was to become responsible for it. To have one's life saved created an unbreakable obligation. It was one of the few customs their warring tribes shared. The tension between them eased slightly. Nashuhu offered her dried meat from his pouch, which she accepted with a nod of thanks. As they shared this simple meal, the first stars appeared overhead. In the deepening blue, Nashuhu pointed out the Star Brothers, two bright points that both Apache and Comanche saw as warrior spirits who watched over the land. Same, Tani said with surprise, recognizing the constellation from her own people's stories. Same, Nashuhu agreed. For a brief moment, something like understanding passed between them, a recognition that beneath the layers of hatred and history, their peoples shared more than they acknowledged. The moment passed as Tani winced, pain returning as the day's medicine began to fade. Nashuhu prepared a fresh poultice, his healer's instincts taking precedence over tribal divisions. As he worked, Tani watched him with a complex expression, part suspicion, part gratitude, part calculation. They both knew that when she was strong enough to travel, decisions would have to be made that would affect not just their lives, but the futures of their peoples. For now, though they existed in a fragile truce beside the sacred spring, enemies bound by the oldest law of the desert, survive first, fight later. The question of what would come after survival remained unspoken between them as night fell over the canyon. Dawn's first light found Nashuhu returning to the hidden canyon, a freshly caught rabbit slung over his shoulder. He had spent the night on a ridge above, watching for signs of searching parties from either tribe. The land had remained quiet, but he knew that wouldn't last. Tani sat propped against a boulder near the spring, her splinted legs stretched before her. She had dragged herself to the water's edge, no small feat with her injuries. Her determination impressed him. Hungry? He asked, holding up the rabbit. She nodded, eyeing the game with appreciation. Good hunter, she said in her limited Apache. As Nashuhu prepared the meal, skinning the rabbit with practiced motions and setting it to cook over a small, nearly smokeless fire, Tani watched intently. Despite being enemies, they shared the common language of survival in this harsh land. Your medicine, she said, gesturing to the poultice on her side, different from Comanche, strong. Nashuhu nodded, recognizing the question behind her words. He pointed to various plants growing near the spring. Red root fights the angry spirits in wounds, he explained, knowing she would understand infection in terms of malevolent spirits. Golden flower cools the blood fire. To his surprise, Tani pointed to a slender plant with blue flowers. We use this too, she said. Bind wounds, stop bleeding. They began exchanging knowledge hesitantly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Tani described Comanche remedies for snakebite using fat from the snake itself mixed with certain prairie flowers. Nashuhu demonstrated how to prepare a paste from pounded yucca root that would ease the pain in her broken leg. When the rabbit was cooked, Nashuhu divided it evenly, offering Tani the first portion, an honor normally reserved for elders or distinguished guests. The significance wasn't lost on her. She accepted with a formal nod, the kind one warrior gives another. As they ate, their conversation moved beyond medicine to hunting techniques. Using sticks to draw in the dirt, Tani showed him how the Comanche hunters formed a living circle that gradually tightened around buffalo herds. Nashuhu explained how Apache trackers could follow game through rocky terrain where hoofprints disappeared. Your name, Tani said suddenly. What means? He who sees hidden paths, Nashuhu translated. I find water, gain trails others cannot see. She nodded thoughtfully. Good name, true name. Then, pointing to herself, Tani, daughter of moon, born when moon was full, bright as day. It was the longest exchange they had managed, bridging their language gap through a mixture of broken words, signs, and drawings. A fragile understanding was taking root between them, like the first green shoots after desert rain. As morning stretched toward noon, Nashuhu checked Tani's wounds. A gash in her side was healing cleanly as sacred waters work. Her leg would need more time, but the swelling had subsided. How came these wounds? He asked, the question that had burned in him since finding her. Tani's face darkened. She looked away, toward the eastern horizon where her people's territory began. Buffalo hunt, she said finally. I rode with warriors. Women not supposed to hunt, but father allowed because I am strong with bow. Pride flickered briefly in her eyes before shadowing again. My cousin, Takakota, jealous of father's favor. During hunt, when others busy, she made a pushing motion. I fall, leg breaks. He comes with knife, ... She traced the line of her wound. Your own blood betrayed you, Nashuhu said, the gravity of such treachery clear in his voice. Tani nodded. Says I died in fall. No one looks for dead. The pieces fell into place. Not abandoned by her people, but left for dead by a treacherous kinsman who had made sure no one would search for her. Nashuhu had heard of such things among his own tribe, ambition poisoning family bonds, power sought through blood. Your father searches now? Maybe, Tani said, if he doubts Takota's words. Their shared meal sat between them, symbol of a trust neither had expected to give. Enemy she might be, but Nashuhu found himself respecting this young woman who had survived betrayal and faced her enemy with courage. When you are stronger, he said carefully, I will help you return. It was a dangerous promise. To approach the Wind Riders would risk his life. To let Tani go without ensuring her safe return might risk his entire tribe if she died on the journey back. Tani studied him with those dark, measuring eyes. Why help enemy? Nashuhu looked toward the spring, its waters catching the midday light. Water flows for all who thirst, he said simply. Medicine heals all who suffer. This is the way of balance. For the first time, Tani smiled a brief expression that transformed her warrior's face. Strange Apache, she said. Good strange. The afternoon sun cast long shadows when Nashuhu's keen ears caught the sound of falling pebbles. From the canyon rim, someone was up there moving carefully, but not carefully enough. He motioned for Tani to remain silent, then quickly gathered her belongings and his medicine items, concealing them beneath a juniper bush. Stay hidden, he whispered, helping her move behind a cluster of boulders near the spring. Apache scouts. Tani's eyes widened, but she nodded, understanding the danger. If his people discovered he was harboring a Comanche, warrior and a chief's daughter at that, the consequences would be severe. Nashuhu climbed partway up the canyon wall, following a nearly invisible path until he reached a ledge that overlooked the approach. 3 young Apache hunters were making their way down, led by Swift Fox, one of the tribe's most promising trackers. They had arranged stones in the tribal marker pattern, a sign they were searching for one of their own. Taking a deep breath, Nashuhu stepped into view. Brothers, he called. The hunters spun, hands dropping to weapons before recognition dawned. Nashuhu, Swift Fox exclaimed. The elders feared you were lost. 3 days with no word. I was tracking Comanche, Nashuhu replied, which was not entirely a lie. They came deeper into our territory than ever before. The youngest hunter, barely 16 summers old, spoke up eagerly. We found their trail yesterday. At least 20 riders. Swift Fox nodded. They rode as if wind spirits chased them, straight through our hunting grounds, without stopping for raids. Strange behavior. I followed them east, Nashuhu said, improvising. They joined a larger band. Something has stirred the Comanche, like a kicked hornet nest. This information clearly troubled the hunters. Swift Fox's eyes narrowed. The elders must hear this. Will you return with us? Nashuhu hesitated, his mind racing. I must complete my scouting. There may be other bands. I'll follow this canyon to its end, and circle back tomorrow. The young hunter looked disappointed, but the council fire is tonight. Gray Hawk has called all warriors to hear news. What news? Nashuhu asked, trying to keep his voice casual. The wind. Riders are gathering, Swift Fox said grimly. Our northern scouts saw them over 100 warriors, led by Black Knife himself. Nashuhu's blood chilled. Black Knife Tani's father, the most feared Comanche war chief in a generation. If he was gathering his elite warriors, something momentous was happening. The drought drives us all to desperation, Swift Fox continued. Black Knife claims we poisoned their western waterholes. As if we would waste good poison in this dry season. He spat contemptuously. Poisoned waterholes? Nashuhu frowned. Such tactics were considered dishonorable by both tribes. Who brings this news? A scout who witnessed their council fire. Black Knife swore by the moon spirit that he would find those responsible. Swift Fox adjusted his quiver. The elders think it's just an excuse to raid our dwindling water sources. Nashuhu nodded gravely. Tell the elders I'll return by tomorrow's sunset with more information. The sacred canyon must be watched. The hunters seemed satisfied with this. They left a small bundle of dried meat and corn cakes for him welcome supplies, and marked their path with small stone cairns as they departed, signaling to other Apache that their scout was safe. When their footsteps faded, Nashuhu returned to the spring. Tani had dragged herself back to her resting place, her face tight with pain from the effort. Your people search for you, he said, helping her settle more comfortably. And yours search for you, she replied. Then, with remarkable perception, you lied to them. Why? Nashuhu unwrapped the bundle of food, considering his answer. A life debt is sacred. Until you are well enough to return safely, you are under my protection. But there was more to it, a growing certainty that the situation between their tribes was more complex than it appeared. Your father gathers the Wind Riders. My scouts say he claims Apache poisoned Comanche waterholes. Tani's reaction was immediate and vehement. No, Takakota told this lie. Her eyes flashed with anger. 2 days before he attacked me, I saw him near waterhole with strange powder. When I asked, he said it was medicine for water spirits. She gripped Nashuhu's arm. Cousin wants war. Wants father's place when elders die in fighting. The pieces aligned with terrible clarity. Takakota had poisoned his own tribe's water, blamed the Apache, then attempted to eliminate the one. Witness. Now both tribes moved toward war based on his treachery. Your father leads over 100 Wind Riders, Nashuhu said grimly. If they attack believing we poisoned their water, ... Many die, both sides. Tani's face showed the same concern. That gripped him. Enemy she might be, but neither wanted to see their people decimated by unnecessary war. I must get you back to your father, Nashuhu decided, before blood is shed. Legs still weak, Tani said, frustration evident. Need 2 more days. Maybe 3. Nashuhu nodded, calculating. 3 days. Then we go together. The stone markers the Apache hunters had left seemed to watch them accusingly symbols. Of the tribal boundaries, Nashuhu had crossed and the trust he had betrayed. Yet as he shared the gifted food with Tani, dividing it equally between them, he felt a growing certainty that his path, while dangerous, was right. 2 enemies sharing bread in the shadow of approaching war, perhaps the strangest sight the once ancient canyon had ever witnessed. Night fell over the canyon, bringing with it a blanket of stars so bright they seemed to hang just beyond reach. The waning moon rose late, casting silver light across the ancient stones. With Nashuhu's help, Tani had moved closer to the small fire, Her splinted legs stretched carefully before her. "Your leg grows stronger," he observed. "The sacred water works quickly." Tani nodded, testing her weight by shifting slightly. "Never seen healing like this. Your medicine powerful." They sat in companionable silence, the crackling fire speaking. For them, 3 days together had worn smooth many of the rough edges between them. Not friendship, perhaps, but something rarer, respect between ancient enemies. Tani looked up at the vast field of stars. "We call that one the Great Bear," she said, pointing to a constellation. "We call it the same," Nashuhu replied, surprised. "And those 7 sisters?" "The 7 maidens who fled to the sky," she said promptly. "Pursued by a warrior, they did not wish to marry." Nashuhu smiled. "Our grandmothers tell the same tale." Reaching for a stick, he smoothed the patch of sand near the fire and began drawing. "The old ones say the stars tell our oldest stories, from before Apache and Comanche became separate peoples." Tani watched intently as he mapped the heavens in miniature, creating a star map in the sand. "Father says our tribes once lived as one people, many generations ago." "My grandmother spoke of this too," Nashuhu said quietly. She said, "A great disagreement split our ancestors. Half followed the buffalo to the plains. Half remained in the mountains and canyons," Tani continued, her finger tracing the division in the sand map. "Brothers became strangers. Strangers became enemies. Yet we still look to the same stars," Nashuhu observed. "Still tell the same stories." Tani's gaze was thoughtful. "Among my people, I am ... different." She struggled for the Apache words. "Other girls learned to tan hides, make pemmican. I learned to ride, to shoot, to track. Father allowed this because I have no brothers. Some elders disapprove." Nashuhu nodded in understanding. "I too walk between worlds. As healer, I cannot be only warrior. Some men think this makes me weak." "Not weak," Tani said firmly. "Different strength." The acknowledgement, coming from a Comanche warrior raised to view Apache as enemies, carried unexpected weight. Nashuhu found himself sharing stories he had told no one of his sister's capture, of his years learning medicine, of his solitary journeys seeking healing plants in distant mountains. In return, Tani spoke of growing up as a chief's daughter, of the expectations that weighed on her, of secret rides alone on the plains where she could simply be herself rather than a symbol of her father's lineage. "The Wind Riders," Nashuhu asked finally, broaching the subject that had hovered unspoken between them. "What kind of man is your father?" Tani's face softened. "Stern but fair. He values honor above all. Even enemies respect black knives. Word once given." She hesitated. "But his anger when betrayed is like summer lightning. Swift, powerful, terrible. If we reach him, tell him the truth about Takakota and the poisoned water, will he listen?" She considered this carefully. "If I speak, yes, but Takakota is son of his sister. Blood ties are sacred. Father will require proof." Nashuhu nodded. Grimly, the challenge ahead was greater than simply returning Tani to her people. They would need to convince a fearsome war chief that his own nephew was a traitor, while avoiding getting killed on sight as enemies. "There is a way among your people," Nashuhu said slowly, "to claim protection as one who has saved life?" Tani's eyes widened in understanding. "The life debt. Yes, any who save the life of a Comanche may claim one favor, even from an enemy." She studied him intently. "You would use this to bring peace rather than save yourself?" "What use? Is saving one life if hundreds die in needless battle?" He asked simply. Looking back at their star map in the sand, Tani traced the ancient patterns with her finger. "Old stories say that before the Great Division, our people were known for wisdom in making peace, not war." She glanced up at him. "Perhaps the stars have led us here to remember this." Nashuhu added a final line to the map, connecting two bright stars that hung low on the horizon. Our paths cross like these stars, for a brief time only, yet changing the pattern of the sky. Perhaps not so brief, Tani said softly, and in her voice was the first hint that what had grown between them might be more than temporary alliance. Above them, the ancient stars continued their eternal journey. Indifferent to the small dramas of humans, yet somehow bearing witness to this rare moment of connection across the chasm of tribal hatred. Dawn arrived with a hot wind from the east, the direction of the Comanche lands. Nashuhu, who had slept lightly on the canyon rim, rose quickly at the sound of distant hoofbeats. Moving silently along the ridgeline, he found a vantage point overlooking the eastern plains. What he saw made his heart sink. A dust cloud marked the approach of many riders, too many for a simple hunting party. The Wind Riders were coming, and they were coming in force. Returning to the spring, he found Tani already awake, testing her injured leg. Her recovery had been remarkable, the sacred water's healing power, combined with her own strength of will. She could now stand with the help of a walking stick Nashuhu had carved for her. "Your people approach from the east," he said without preamble. "Many warriors. They will reach the canyon mouth by midday." Tana's expression was complex relief mingled with apprehension. "How many?" "More than 50 that I could see." "Maybe twice that behind them?" She nodded grimly. "Wind Riders. Father leads them himself when they number over 100. She attempted a few careful steps, wincing slightly. "I must meet them before they reach Apache territory." "Not alone," Nashuhu said firmly. "The journey would reopen your wounds. And if Takakota rides with them..." The unspoken danger hung between them. If her treacherous cousin spotted her first, she might never get the chance to speak to her father. As if summoned by their conversation, a shadow passed overhead, an eagle soaring on the morning thermals. From its talons dangled something bright. That caught the sun. As they watched, the eagle circled once, then dropped its burden. A single feather drifted down, landing almost at Nashu's seeds. He picked it up with reverence. Eagle feather, from a war eagle. The golden-tipped feather was unmistakable, the kind worn only by Wind Rider warriors who had proven themselves in battle. "Wind Rider Scout," Tani said, taking the feather from him with a look of concern. "They mark their territory with these when they prepare for war. This means they have already claimed these canyons as their hunting ground." Nashuhu. Worry deepened. If Wind Riders were already scouting this close to the sacred spring, his people were in imminent danger. The Apache village lay just 2 canyons west, easily discovered if the Comanche pushed further into their territory. "We must act now," he decided. "Can you ride?" Tani considered, then nodded. "If necessary." "I'll find a horse," Nashuhu said. "My people keep mounts in the hidden valley north of here. By the time I return, you should gather your strength." As he prepared to leave, Tani caught his arm. "Wait." She pulled a small item from her medicine pouch, a carved stone bear, simple, but powerful, strung on a leather thong. "Protection," she said, placing it around his neck. "From my mother before she walked the star path. It guards against evil spirits." The gesture caught Nashuhu by surprise. Such talismans were deeply personal, rarely shared outside family. He touched the stone bear, feeling its smooth contours worn by years of handling. "I will return it when our journey ends," he promised. "Keep it until then," she said. "We both face danger now." Nashuhu departed swiftly, following hidden trails known only to Apache scouts. As he moved through the rough terrain, his mind worked furiously, planning their next steps. They would need to intercept the Wind Riders before they reached Apache territory, yet do so in a way that allowed Tani to speak to her father before. Trigger-happy warriors filled them both with arrows. The hidden valley was a small paradise of grass and water, carefully concealed from enemy eyes. Several horses grazed there, not the tribe's main herd, but reserves kept for emergencies. Nashuhu selected a sturdy buckskin moray, strong enough to carry 2 if necessary. As he prepared to leave with the horse, movement on the western ridge caught his eye. Apache scouts, at least 10 of them, moving toward the sacred canyon from the direction of the village. His absence had been noted. The elders were searching for him more thoroughly now, leading the buckskin down a hidden trail. Nashuhu made a wide circle to avoid his tribesmen. If they caught him stealing a horse and heading toward Comanche, warriors with one of the enemy, no explanation would save him from being branded a traitor. By the time he returned to the spring, the sun had climbed high. Tani had packed what few possessions they had, using broad yucca leaves to create a carrying bundle. Her face was drawn with pain but determined. Apache scouts to the west, he told her as he helped her mount the horse. Winged riders from the east. We are caught between them. Which way? She asked, settling uncomfortably on the buckskin's bare back. Nashuhu pointed south toward a narrow side canyon. We circle around. Approach your father's band from behind. He swung up. Behind her, taking the reins. The Wind Riders honor messengers who approach openly, if they carry no weapons and show empty hands, she confirmed. But you are Apache. They may shoot first. Then you must be seen first. He urged the horse forward, keeping to the shadows where possible. We have until sunset to find a way through this trap. As they rode, the distant sound of drums reached them, the rhythmic pounding of Apache war preparations. His people sensed the coming danger too. Soon both tribes would be armed for battle, searching the canyons for each other. And caught in the middle, an unlikely pair, each a traitor to their own people by the ancient laws, yet perhaps the only hope for preventing a war based on lies. Eagle feather Tani had tucked into her hair, fluttered in the hot wind. A Wind Rider scout had dropped it to mark territory for war. Now it would return to its people as a symbol of something else entirely, a chance for truth to be heard before blood soaked the dry canyonlands. The narrow side canyon opened onto a sheltered valley where juniper trees provided welcome shade from the afternoon sun. Nashuhu drew the buckskin to a halt, listening intently. They had circled south for hours, avoiding both Apache scouts and Comanche warriors. Now they needed to rest before making their final approach to the Wind Riders' camp. Water, he said, helping Tani dismount. Her leg had stiffened during the ride, and she leaned heavily on his arm. They found a small seep spring beneath an overhanging rock. Nashuhu pulled out his water skin to fill it, but Tani stopped him with a hand on his wrist. Look, she whispered, pointing to a dark residue around the spring's edge, like at the poisoned water holes. Nashuhu examined the residue carefully without touching it. A grayish powder mixed with the mud-nothing that occurred naturally. Poison, he agreed grimly. Someone has been here recently. They backed, away from the contaminated spring. Tani's face was troubled. Takakota moves ahead of the war party, poisoning water sources. To ensure the blame falls on Apache, Nashuhu concluded. Your cousin plans thoroughly. A sudden sound, horse's soft nickering froze them both. They were not alone. Behind the junipers, Nashuhu whispered, helping Tani move quickly despite her injury. They had barely concealed themselves when a rider entered the small valley from the eastern approach. Even without Tani's sharp intake of breath, Nashuhu would have known this was no ordinary Comanche. The man's horse was magnificent, his dress that of a warrior of high rank. Around his neck hung multiple coup necklaces, each bone and bead representing an enemy defeated. Takakota, Tani breathed, her body tensing like a drawn bow. The warrior dismounted gracefully, moving to check the poisoned spring with the confidence of one who knows his work will not be discovered. From his saddlebag, he removed a small deerskin pouch, preparing to add more of his deadly powder to the water. "I must stop him," Tani said, her hand moving to the knife at her belt. Náshŭ had returned it to her that morning. "Wait," he cautioned. "We need him to reveal his plan." But Tani's warrior training took precedence over caution. Before Nashuhu could stop her, she stepped into the clearing, her voice ringing with authority despite her injured state. "Cousin," she called in Comanche, "the dead return to witness your treachery." Takakota spun, the poison pouch dropping from his hands. For a moment, pure shock registered on his face, then calculation replaced it, his hand moving to his knife. "The spirits play tricks," he said smoothly. "My cousin died in a hunting accident. Everyone knows this." "Your knife made this wound," Tani replied, pointing to her side. "Your hands broke my leg when you pushed me from my horse. You left me to die so your lies about Apache poisoning our waters would go unchallenged." Takota's eyes narrowed. "And yet you live. How unfortunate." His gaze shifted, catching sight of Nashuhu as he emerged from the junipers. "Ah, now I understand. You've taken an Apache lover. How your father will mourn when he learns his daughter betrayed her people." "She speaks truth," Nashuhu said in halting Comanche. "I found her near death. The poison is yours, not Apache." Takakota laughed, a sound without humor. "Who will believe an Apache and a traitor?" He circled slowly, knife drawn. "When I bring your scalps to Black Knife, I will tell him how I found his daughter conspiring with the enemy, how you both admitted poisoning our sacred waters. My father will know the truth," Tani said firmly, though Nashuhu could see the doubt in her eyes. Takakota was a favored nephew, his word valued in council. "Your father sees what I show him," Takakota sneered. "Soon he will see only through my eyes, as war chief after this battle claims him." He lunged suddenly, his knife slashing toward Tani's throat. Nashuhu moved with the speed that had made him the tribe's best scout, shoving Tani aside and meeting Takota's attack with his own blade. The Comanche warrior was strong, but Nashuhu's years of moving through difficult terrain had made him quick and sure-footed. They circled each other, knives flashing in the dappled sunlight. "You cannot defeat a wind rider, Apache dog," Takakota growled, feinting left before slashing right. Nashuhu avoided the blow, but barely. "I don't need to defeat you," he replied, "only to expose you." Tani had regained her balance, drawing her own knife despite her injured leg. Takakota now faced opponents on two sides, his confidence wavering slightly. "You were always jealous of my place with father," Tani said, her voice steady. "But to poison your own people's water, to blame another tribe, this is the act of a coward, not a future chief." Silence. Takakota lunged at her, his greater reach nearly connecting despite her quick dodge. The movement left his side exposed. Nashuhu struck, his blade slicing across Takota's arm. The Comanche warrior howled in pain and rage, whirling to face this new threat. "I will kill you slowly," he promised, blood dripping from his wounded arm. Before either could move, Tani had reached the fallen pouch of poison. "Look," she called, holding it up. "The proof of your treachery." Takota's face contorted with fury. With unexpected speed, he charged not at Nashuhu, but at his cousin, knocking her backward. Her injured leg gave way, and she fell hard, the poison pouch flying from her grasp. "You should have died in the canyon," Takakota snarled, his knife descending toward her heart. Nashuhu threw himself forward, catching Takota's wrist before the blade could find its mark. They rolled in the dust, each fighting for control of the knife. Takakota was heavier, using his weight to pin Nashuhu beneath him. The blade inched closer to the Apache's throat. "Your people will die believing mine killed them," Takakota whispered, his face twisted with malice. "And I will lead the Wind Riders to glory over Apache bones." A sudden sharp pain exploded in Takota's side. He looked down in shock to see Tani's knife buried to the hilt between his ribs. His cousin stood over them, her face set in grim determination, despite the pain of her re-injured leg. "The Wind Riders deserve a better leader than a poisoner of Wolf. Children and elders," she said quietly. Takota's eyes widened in disbelief. His grip on the knife faltered, and Nashuhu twisted free. Blood bubbled from the Comanche warrior's mouth as he tried to speak, but only a gurgle emerged. He collapsed to his knees, then fell face forward into the dust. Silence descended. On the small valley, Tani stood motionless, staring at her cousin's body, her knife still clutched in her trembling hand. "He was blood kin," she said finally, her voice hollow. "We shared a grandmother's fire as children." Nashuhu rose slowly, wiping dust from his face. He chose his path. "And now we must choose ours." Tani looked toward the east, where her father and 100 Wind Riders approached, thirsting for Apache blood. "Takakota will not return. They will search for him. And to the west, my people prepare for war." Nashuhu retrieved the fallen poison pouch, careful not to touch the powder inside. "This is our proof, but we must reach your father with it before the Wind Riders find us with Takota's body." The gravity of their situation settled over them. Takota's horse had fled during the fight. They had only the tired buckskin, and Tani's leg was bleeding again from the fall. "We have little time," Nashuhu said, helping her back to their horse. "The sun sets soon, and with it, our chance for peace." As they mounted, Tani cast a last glance at her cousin's body. "Leave him for the coyotes," she said coldly, "as he would have left me." The poisoned water skin lay beside the spring, a silent witness to treachery that had nearly succeeded in igniting a war. Beside it, Takota's body cooled in the late afternoon. Shadows, his dreams of power ended by the cousin he had tried to murder. Nashuhu urged the buckskin forward, Tani's arms wrapped around his waist for support. They rode east, toward 100 elite warriors who would kill an Apache on sight, their only hope to prevent the bloodshed that one man's ambition had set in motion. The buckskin mare labored beneath their combined weight, foam flecking her sides as Nashuhu pushed her as hard as he dared. The sun hung low in the western sky, painting the canyon walls blood red, an omen neither rider could ignore. From the north came an ominous sound, the deep, rhythmic pounding of Apache war drums. Nashuhu's people were calling all warriors to battle stations. Soon they would move east, seeking the Comanche intruders. "We're running out of time," he said grimly, feeling Tani's arms tighten around his waist. "There," she pointed toward a narrow pass between two towering mesas. "That leads to the Valley of Red Stones. Father would make camp there, good water, defensible position." As they approached the pass, Nashuhu drew the exhausted horse to a halt. "I cannot ride into a Comanche war camp," he said. "They will kill me before I can speak." Tani nodded, understanding the dilemma. "I must go alone, with your injury? And if Takakota has allies among the warriors, there is no choice." She slid carefully from the horse, testing her weight on her injured leg. The renewed bleeding had stopped, but pain lined her face. "Give me the poison pouch. I will tell my father everything." Nashuhu hesitated. After all they had been through together, sending her alone into potential danger felt wrong. Yet he knew she was right. An Apache approaching a Wind Rider camp would be shot on sight. "Wait," he said suddenly. "There is another way. The life debt custom, it protects even enemies?" "Yes," she confirmed. "One who saves the life of any. Comanche may claim protection, but you would have to announce yourself from a distance, show empty hands." and hope your father's warriors honor the ancient ways before they fill me with arrows." Nashuhu finished wryly. A new sound reached them, horses moving through the pass ahead. The Wind Riders were on the move, coming their way. "No time for debate," Tani said urgently. "We must separate. I will approach from the south, where they expect Takakota to return. You circle north. Find my father if you can. Look for the war chief's staff with 3 eagle feathers. And if I cannot reach him, then I must convince him alone." She gripped Nashuhu's arm. "The poison pouch is our only proof. Without it, my word against Takota's memory... Nashuhu made a swift decision. He divided the poisonous powder between 2 small pouches, giving one to Tani and keeping the other. Now we each have proof. The wisdom of this precaution was evident in Tani's eyes. "Ride north," she instructed. "Wait until you hear the Wind Rider call 3 eagle cries. That will be father signaling the advance. You must reach him before that sound." They looked at each other, suddenly awkward. In the span of a few days, they had moved from enemies to allies to something neither had words to define. Now they might be riding to their deaths. "If we do not meet again in this world," Tani said formally, "I will look for you in the star fields." Nashuhu touched the stone bear talisman she had given him. "Your mother's spirit has protected us this far. Perhaps she will guide us still." Without further words, they parted, Tani limping determinedly toward the southern approach to the valley, Nashuhu urging the tired buckskin along a game trail that wound northward. As he rode, the drumming from the Apache camp grew louder, more urgent. His people were moving, preparing to defend their territory against what they believed was an unprovoked Comanche attack. Without him to report what he had learned about the poisoned water, they would march into battle, believing they fought for justice. The truth rested in a small pouch at his belt, and in the wounded Comanche woman making her way, alone to confront her father. Never had so much depended on so little. From ahead came the sound of many horses, the clink of weapons, the low murmur of warriors preparing for battle. The Wind Riders were gathering in the valley beyond the ridge. Somewhere among them was Black Knife, war chief and father, who would decide whether to believe his daughter's incredible tale or to launch an attack that would drench the canyons in blood. Nashuhu dismounted, giving the exhausted buckskin a gentle pat before continuing on foot. Better to approach quietly, to observe before revealing himself. The horse would only announce his presence too soon. As the sun touched the western horizon, casting long shadows across the land, he crept to the ridgeline and looked down into the valley of red stones. The sight stole his breath. Over 100 mounted warriors filled the valley floor, their horses stamping impatiently, weapons gleaming in the dying light. War paint marked their faces and chests, the fearsome Wind Riders in their full battle glory, prepared to sweep across Apache land like a storm. And then he heard it, the first notes of the war drums from the Comanche side, answering the Apache drums that still echoed from the west. 2 ancient enemies calling their warriors to battle, unaware that they danced to the tune of a dead man's treachery. Tani limped toward the southern edge of the valley of red stones, each step sending jolts of pain through her mending leg. The sacred Apache water had worked wonders, but her desperate fight with Takakota had undone some of the healing. Still, pain was an old companion to a Comanche warrior. She pushed it aside, focusing on what lay ahead. The evening air carried the sounds of her people preparing for war, the snorting of war ponies, the rhythmic chanting of medicine songs, the sharp commands of squad leaders positioning their men. These were the sounds of her childhood, of a life spent as daughter to the greatest war chief the Wind Riders had known in generations. At her throat, she fingered the necklace her mother had given her before death, took her to the star fields, simple design of turquoise and silver that marked her as Black Knife's daughter. It would be her protection and her proof of identity. as she neared the camp. 2 mounted scouts appeared suddenly from behind a cluster of boulders, arrows nocked and ready. They wore the distinctive eagle feather bandanas of the Wind Riders. "Halt," one called in Comanche. "Identify yourself." Tani straightened despite her pain, letting her face catch the last rays of the setting sun. "I am Tani, daughter of Black Knife, returned from the Shadowlands." The scouts exchanged shocked glances. "Tani walks with the ancestors," the lead scout said warily. "Takakota brought news of her death during the buffalo hunt." "Takakota lied," she replied, her voice ringing with authority. "He tried to kill me and left me for dead. I must speak with my father immediately." The scouts hesitated, clearly uncertain. Finally, the older one lowered his bow slightly. "If you are truly Tani, where did Black Knife take you on your 12th summer?" A test question, one only the real Tani would know. "To the Cave of Hands, where I added my handprint beside his and my mother's," she answered without hesitation. "He gave me my first bow that day, and I shot my first deer on the journey home." The scouts lowered their weapons completely, amazement replacing suspicion. "It is you," the younger one breathed. "But how?" "Take me to my father," she interrupted. "There is treachery among us, and war comes because of it." The older scout dismounted, offering his horse. "Ride, daughter of Black Knife. Your father mourns you in his war tent." With their help, Tani mounted, grateful to be off her injured leg. As they entered the camp, warriors stopped their preparations to stare. Word of her return raced ahead. The chief's daughter, thought dead, returned on the eve of battle. Some reached out to touch her horse, as if to confirm she was real, and not a spirit dot at the center of the camp stood the war chief's lodge, adorned with the skull of a great buffalo and flanked by twin spears bearing enemy scalps. Outside it paced a broad-shouldered man whose very stance commanded respect. Black Knife, war chief of the Wind Riders, her father. He turned as the murmurs of the crowd reached him, his weathered face frozen in disbelief as he saw her approaching. For a moment, neither spoke. The hardened war chief struck silent by the sight of the daughter he had believed lost. "Father," Tani said, sliding carefully from the horse to stand before him. Black Knife's hand trembled slightly as he reached out to touch her face. "My daughter lives," he said, his deep voice rough with emotion. The spirit dreamed spoke true. Then his eyes hardened as he noted her injuries, the splinted leg, the healing wound in her side. "Who did this? Tell me, and they will feed the crows before dawn." "It was Takakota, your sister's son," Tani said clearly, ensuring that the gathering warriors heard. "He tried to kill me during the buffalo hunt, then told you I died in an accident." A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Takakota was well respected, a rising warrior who many believed would one day lead the Wind Riders after Black Knife. "These are grave words," her father said carefully. "Takakota mourned you deeply. He has been my right hand in preparing this war against the Apache who poisoned our waters." "That too is his lie," Tani said, producing the small pouch of poison. "This is what Takakota used to poison our own waterholes, to blame the Apache and drive us to war. I caught him in the act, and he tried to silence me." Murmurs of disbelief and anger swept through the gathered warriors. Black Knife's face darkened, with fury but also doubt. Takakota was blood kin, his sister's only son, groomed as his successor. "How did you survive these wounds?" he demanded. "How do you come to us with such accusations against your own blood?" Tani drew a deep breath. The moment had come to reveal the most difficult truth of all. "I was saved by an Apache," she said. "Clearly, a scout and healer who found me near death and used his medicine to heal me. He helped me discover Takota's treachery and bring this warning." The warriors' murmurs turned to outrage. Many reached for weapons. Black Knife himself seemed torn between joy at his daughter's return and fury at her words. "Where is this Apache?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Tani met her father's gaze steadily, reaching for the medicine pouch at her waist, where she carried the turquoise necklace of her mother. "He comes under the protection of the life debt," she said formally. "By our most sacred law, the one who saved my life cannot be harmed." As Tani confronted her father, Nashuhu was making his own desperate move. From his vantage point, above the valley, he had watched her enter the Comanche camp, seen the gathering of warriors around Black Knife's war tent. Whether she succeeded or failed in convincing her father, Nashuhu knew he had another urgent task. His own people needed warning. The Apache war drums still pounded from the western canyons. His tribe was mobilizing, preparing to defend themselves against what they believed was an unprovoked Comanche incursion. Without knowledge of Takota's treachery, they would march into battle, justified in their own minds, but deceived nonetheless. Moving silently through the gathering darkness, Nashuhu circled wide around the Comanche encampment. The tired, buckskin mare followed faithfully, though he dared not ride her now. Any mounted figure would be spotted instantly by the vigilant Wind Rider scouts. His path took him northwest, toward the pass that would lead to his people's main canyon. Twice he froze as Comanche scouts passed nearby, their eyes scanning the darkening landscape for signs of Apache movement. Each time, his scouts training the ability to become as still and invisible as the stones themselves saved him from. Discovery. As he neared Apache territory, a new danger emerged. His own people would have scouts posted, warriors who would shoot first at any figure approaching from the direction of the enemy. Nashuhu needed a way to identify himself without being killed on sight. From his medicine pouch, he withdrew a length of white buckskin, the traditional Apache symbol of truce. Tying it to a juniper branch, he created a simple flag that would be recognized by his tribesmen. It was a risk. If Comanche scouts spotted him with this symbol, they might target him as an Apache messenger. But he had no choice. The moon rose, illuminating the rocky terrain with silver light. Nashuhu picked his way carefully up a narrow trail that would lead to the main Apache position. Ahead, he could see the flickering of campfires, his people gathered for war. "Halt!" The command came suddenly from the shadows in Apache. "Step forward slowly or die where you stand." Nashuhu raised the white buckskin flag, keeping his movements deliberate. "I am Nashuhu, scout of the canyon people," he called. "I bring urgent news for the council." Two warriors emerged from behind boulders, bows drawn and aimed. At his heart, he recognized Swift Fox, the young tracker who had found him days earlier. "Náshŭ?" Swift Fox lowered his bow slightly. "Where have you been?" "The elders sent search parties. We thought the Comanche had taken you." "I must speak with the council immediately," Nashuhu insisted, avoiding the direct question. "The Wind Riders gather in the Valley of Red Stones. Over 100 warriors led by Black Knife himself. The second warrior, an older man named Stone Hand, kept his arrow nocked. We know this already. Our scouts reported their movements since dawn. But why do you come from their direction, carrying a peace flag? Have you been captured? Forced to bring terms?" Nashuhu understood their suspicion. In their position, he too would doubt a tribesman who appeared from enemy territory on the eve of battle. "The Comanche believe we poisoned their water." "Holes," he explained. "But it was one of their own, a warrior named Takakota, who seeks to become war chief." "I have proof." Stonehand's eyes narrowed. "How would you know the schemes of a Comanche warrior? Unless—" "Take me to the elders," Nashuhu interrupted. "There is no time for explanations here. Both our peoples march toward needless battle. Swift." Fox and Stone Hand exchanged glances, their suspicion evident. Finally, Swift Fox nodded. "We will take you to Gray Hawk, but you must surrender your weapons." Nashuhu handed over his knife without hesitation. The pouch of poison remained, hidden in his medicine bag, his only proof of Takota's treachery. They led him into the Apache camp, where warriors prepared arrows, sharpened knives, and painted their faces with the red and black designs of war. Many looked up as he passed, surprise and curiosity in their expressions. Word of his arrival spread quickly through the camp. At the central fire sat the tribal council 5 elders, led by Greyhawk, a legendary warrior whose wisdom was as renowned as his former prowess in battle. Now in his 7th decade, his eyes remained sharp as the hawk for which he was named. "So the wandering scout returns," Greyhawk said as Nashuhu was brought before him. "On the eve of battle, from the direction of our enemies. Strange timing, Nashuhu. I bring truth that may prevent needless death," Nashuhu replied, meeting the elder's penetrating gaze without flinching. "Truth?" Greyhawk's voice carried subtle danger. "Our scouts found evidence of your presence at the sacred spring. They also found signs that you were not alone." His eyes hardened. "Who was with you, scout? And why do you come to us now? When the Wind Riders mass at our borders?" Nashuhu knew the moment of reckoning had come. No clever words would suffice, only the complete truth, however dangerous it might be to admit. "I found a wounded Comanche near the sacred canyon," he said, his voice steady despite the gasps and murmurs his words provoked. "A young woman left for dead by her own kinsmen. I took her to the spring and healed her." Outrage erupted among the gathered warriors. "Traitor!" someone shouted from the crowd. "He has revealed our sacred place to the enemy." Greyhawk raised a hand for silence, his face impassive. "You took an enemy to the sacred spring? You broke our oldest taboo?" "I am a healer first," Nashuhu replied, "and what I learned from this act has bearing on the battle we now face." From his medicine pouch, he withdrew the small deerskin packet containing Takota's poison. This was used by a Comanche warrior named Takakota to poison his own tribe's water holes. "To blame on us can provoke this war." The elders leaned forward, skepticism and interest warring in their expressions. "How do you know this?" asked White Crane, the oldest of the council. "Because the woman I saved was Takota's cousin daughter of Black Knife himself, who witnessed his treachery and was nearly killed to silence her." This revelation sent a new wave of murmurs through the gathering. Black Knife's name was well known and feared among the Apache. "A convenient tale," said Stone Thrower, another elder. "Perhaps this poison is Apache, and you seek to deflect blame for your betrayal." Nashuhu stood his ground. "Test it. It is unlike any poison our people use, made from plants that grow only in Comanche territory." Old Hummingbird, his mentor and the tribe's master healer, stepped forward from the shadows. Without a word, he took the pouch, opened it carefully, and examined the contents. After a moment, he looked up, his ancient eyes troubled. "This is not Apache medicine," he confirmed. "It comes from the yellow root that grows on the eastern plains. We do not use this." A heavy silence fell over the gathering. Greyhawk studied Nashuhu with those penetrating eyes that seemed to reach into a man's soul. "If what you say is true," he said finally, "you have broken our laws to bring us vital knowledge. If false, you have committed the highest treason." He leaned forward. "How can we know you do not simply protect your Comanche woman? That you have not been bewitched by the enemy?" It was the question Nashuhu had dreaded, the accusation implicit in the elder's words that he had betrayed his people for personal reasons. Yet he could not deny the truth of what had grown between him and Tani, unlikely as it seemed. "I can only offer myself to the trial of fire," he said quietly, invoking an ancient Apache tradition where a suspected traitor would prove loyalty through pain. A ripple of surprise passed through the council. The trial of fire was rarely invoked, and even more rarely survived. It involved holding red-hot stones until either innocence was accepted or the pain forced a confession. Greyhawk nodded slowly. "Bring the stones," he commanded Dot as warriors hurried to prepare the trial. Nashuhu gazed westward, toward the Valley of Red Stones, where Tani faced her own test before her people. The white buckskin peace flag fluttered in the night breeze, symbol of his desperate hope that blood could still be avoided between their tribes. "I take no pleasure in this," Greyhawk said quietly, as the stones were heated in the central. "Fire, you are among our most promising young men." "I still am," Nashuhu replied. "A true Apache protects his people, even from unseen dangers, even when it requires walking a difficult path." The stones glowed red in the fire, ready for the ancient test that would determine whether his words would be heeded or dismissed. And with them, the fate of two peoples poised on the edge of war. The moon hung high overhead, casting silver light on two peoples preparing for war. In the Valley of Red Stones, Black Knife's face had turned to stone as he absorbed his daughters. "Words. You claimed a life debt for an Apache?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I do," Tani replied firmly. "By our oldest law, the one who saves a Comanche life is owed a debt that transcends tribal boundaries." The gathered warriors muttered disapprovingly. Black Knife raised his hand for silence. "Where is this Apache now, bringing truth to his own people, as I bring it to mine?" Tani held out the pouch of poison. "This is what Takakota used to taint our water holes, then blamed the Apache. I saw him with my own eyes." Before Black Knife could respond, a commotion arose at the edge of the camp. Warriors parted as a rider approached at a gallop, one of the scouts sent to find Takakota. "War Chief!" The scout called, dismounting quickly. "We found Takota's body in the southern valley. He has been killed a knife to the ribs." Black Knife's eyes snapped to his daughter, suddenly cold with suspicion. "Explain." "He attacked us when we confronted him with his treachery," Tani said, steadily. "He would have killed us both." "I did what was necessary." "Us?" Black Knife's voice sharpened. "You and the Apache?" "Yes. Nashuhu is his name. He saved my life when Takakota left me for dead." The revelation that his daughter had killed her own cousin alongside an Apache caused an uproar among the wind. Riders. Many reached for weapons, their faces dark with anger. "Silence!" Black Knife roared, and the camp immediately stilled. No warrior dared defy his direct command. He turned back to Tani, studying her face carefully. "My sister's son is dead by your hand. You stand before us asking us to believe he was a traitor, based on the word of an Apache enemy." "Based on what I saw with my own eyes," Tani corrected. "Takakota wanted this war. He wanted you to lead the charge and die in battle so he could take your place." For a long moment, Black Knife was silent, weighing her words against a lifetime of tribal tradition and the complex politics of the Wind Riders. Finally, he spoke. "The poison," he said, gesturing to the pouch in her hand. "How do we know it is Takota's and not planted by your Apache friend?" "You know it is not," she replied simply. "But our peoples take their first steps on a new path. We must walk carefully, as guides rather than distractions." Nashuhu nodded, understanding the wisdom in her words. What had grown between them, Apache scout and Comanche warrior, was as unprecedented as the peace their tribes now tentatively embraced. Like that fragile peace, it would need time and nurturing to grow strong. "Until the full moon, then," he said. "Until then," she agreed. Then, with a warrior's boldness that was purely Tani, she leaned forward and pressed her lips briefly to his a gesture that would have been unthinkable days earlier. "The life debt remains unpaid," she whispered against his ear. "Remember that." Before he could respond, she was gone, moving with only the slightest limp toward her father's warriors. Nashuhu watched her go, The memory of her lips on is more potent than any medicine. Old Hummingbird appeared at his side, the ancient healer's eyes knowing. The sacred spring has worked powerful medicine indeed, he observed. Healing more than just wounds of the flesh. Will it last? Nashuhu asked, his eyes still following Tani's retreating figure. This peace between enemies? That depends on those who nurture it, the old man replied. Like any new growth, it needs tending. He looked pointedly at Nashuhu. Show. As do other new and tender things that have taken root in unexpected places. As the sun cleared the eastern horizon, the tribes departed in opposite directions, Comanche to their plains, Apache to their canyons. Yet unlike countless partings before, no war cries echoed across the distance. No arrows flew, no blood soaked the earth. Instead, promises of future meetings hung in the air. Apache healers would share medicine knowledge with Comanche counterparts. Wind Rider horse masters would teach Apache riders their techniques. Young warriors from both tribes would learn to hunt the buffalo together on the eastern plains. And at the center of this unprecedented exchange, two unlikely peace speakers would meet again beneath the full moon, an Apache scout who had broken his tribe's most sacred law to save an enemy, and a Comanche warrior woman who had killed her own blood to prevent an unjust war. The mixed tribe council fire had burned down to embers, but Nashuhu knew with certainty that it would be lit again. Something new had begun in the shadow of tragedy and treachery, something that might, with courage and care, heal wounds far older than those that had brought Tani and him together beneath the crimson sunset days ago. 15 summers passed, each season weaving the once severed threads between Apache and Comanche into an increasingly sturdy fabric. What began as cautious tolerance had gradually transformed into genuine alliance, then friendship, and finally kinship reclaimed across the chasm of generations. At the sacred spring where it all began, a stone marker now stood, a monument carved with symbols of both tribes. Its creation had been a joint effort, Apache stoneworkers and Comanche artists collaborating to preserve the memory of how peace had been born from treachery and mercy. Children from both tribes played together beside the crystal waters, their laughter echoing off canyon walls that had once witnessed only the tense silence of enemies stalking each other. They splashed and chattered in a mixed language that borrowed freely from both peoples, the beginning of a new shared tongue that bridged ancient divisions. Watching them from the shade of a juniper tree, Nashuhu, othered face creased in a smile. Now in his 5th decade, silver threading his once black hair, he had become more than just a scout and healer. The people called him Peacefinder, a respected elder whose wisdom was sought by both tribes. They have no memory of the old hatreds, observed the woman who sat beside him, her hand comfortably entwined with his. Tani's beauty had matured rather than faded with the passing years. The fierce Comanche warrior now tempered with the serenity of a tribal matriarch. The scar on her side from Takota's blade had long since faded to a pale line, but she wore it proudly as a reminder of the journey that had brought them here. That is our greatest victory, Nashuhu replied, squeezing her hand gently. They will know the stories, but not the bitterness. Among the playing children was their own son, Strongwater, a boy of 13 summers who embodied the union of Apache and Comanche blood. Born of a love that had once seemed impossible, he moved easily between both worlds, equally at home in canyon strongholds and on the open plains. Their marriage had not come quickly or easily. For 3 years after the Peace Council, Nashuhu and Tani had served their respective tribes as ambassadors, meeting only at formal gatherings, their growing feelings carefully contained behind diplomatic masks. It was Black Knife who finally broke the impasse, publicly declaring that his daughter's life debt to Nashuhu could only be repaid through the ultimate gift, her hand in marriage. If both were willing, they had been more than willing. Their union, celebrated beneath a full moon with elders from both tribes officiating, became a powerful symbol of the new alliance. Where once Apache and Comanche had shared only hatred and bloodshed, they now shared family bonds. Father, mother. Strong water called, running toward them with the boundless energy of youth. Grandfather says it's time. Black Knife approached more sedately behind his grandson, his once imposing frame now slightly stooped with age, but still commanding respect. The legendary war chief had transformed into an equally formidable peace chief, his tactical brilliance redirected toward building alliances rather than winning battles. The delegations from the northern tribes arrive, he announced. They are curious about this peace between ancient enemies. Nashuhu nodded, rising to his feet with the fluid grace that had never left him. They too suffer from needless wars. Perhaps our story will show them another path. The story had spread far beyond the territories of Apache and Comanche. How a lone scout had found an enemy girl near death. How mercy had prevailed over hatred. How treachery had been exposed. And peace forged in the trial of combat. With each telling, it gained the weight of legend, inspiring other tribes to reconsider ancient conflicts. As they walked toward the gathering place where representatives from 5 northern tribes waited, Tani paused at the stone marker, touching its carved surface reverently. Sometimes I still see him, she admitted quietly. Takakota, in my dreams. He stands at the edge of the Shadowlands, watching. Perhaps he does, Nashuhu replied. Perhaps he sees what grew from his treachery, opposite of what he intended. A strange legacy, she mused. That one who sought war became the catalyst for lasting peace. Their son ran ahead, eager to meet the visitors, while Black Knife waited patiently for his daughter and son-in-law. The 3 walked together toward the future they had built, a future where children of both tribes grew up without learning. To hate, where wisdom was shared freely across boundaries, where the wounds of history had finally begun to heal. Behind them, the sacred spring continued its eternal flow, witness to the remarkable transformation that had begun with one act of mercy beneath a crimson sunset. Water that had once been jealously guarded now nourished all who came in peace. Its ancient magic working not just on physical wounds, but on the deeper injuries of hatred and division. The eagle feather in Nashuhu's hair caught the sunlight as he walked beside his Comanche wife toward the waiting delegates. Once it had marked territory for war. Now it symbolized something else entirely, the soaring hope of peoples who had found, against all odds, that ancient enemies could become family. In one fluid motion, he swept Tall Bull's legs from under him. The Comanche warrior crashed heavily to the ground, momentarily stunned. Before he could recover, Nashuhu was on him, knife at his throat. Yield, Nashuhu said quietly. There has been enough blood. Tall Bull's eyes blazed with defiance. Never to an Apache dog. With unexpected strength born of desperation, he bucked and twisted, dislodging Nashuhu, enough to reach inside his ceremonial belt. A flash of metal caught the firelight, a hidden blade, prohibited by the sacred rules of combat. Treachery! Someone shouted from the crowd. Tani's warning cry came simultaneously. Nashuhu! Knife! The Apache scout barely evaded the strike, the forbidden's blade slicing air where his heart had been a moment before. He rolled away, regaining his feet as Tall Bull rose, now armed with both the ceremonial stone knife and the forbidden's metal blade. Black Knife stepped forward, his face thunderous. The circle is dishonored. But Tall Bull was beyond hearing. Maddened by his failure and exposure, he charged Nashuhu with both blades. All technique abandoned in his frenzy to kill, Nashuhu met the charge with the calm precision of a hunter. Stepping inside Tall Bull's wild swing, he caught the warrior's wrist, redirecting the momentum of the attack. Tall Bull's own force carried him forward. the hidden blade he had intended for Nashuju's Hing-Sar-O's, heart driving instead into his own side. Collective gasp rose from the Wind Riders as Tall Bull stumbled, looking down in shock at the metal knife, protruding from between his ribs. Blood bubbled from his lips as he fell to his knees. "Takakota gave me this blade," he gasped, his voice suddenly clear in the stunned silence. "Said I might need it? Against Apache treachery. Said when he became war chief, I would be his right hand." The gathered warriors murmured in shock. Even in his dying confession, Tall Bull had revealed Takota's ambition to replace Black Knife from his belt. Tall Bull weakly withdrew a small pouch identical to the ones Tani and Nashuhu had shown as evidence. "He gave me this too," he whispered, blood staining his lips, "to poison the spring near the fighting ground ... Make Apache seem guilty." A pouch fell from his fingers as his strength failed. Nashuhu knelt beside the fallen warrior, healer's instincts taking precedence over combat. But the wound was mortal. Tall Bull had been impaled on his own treachery. The spirits. "Judge me," he gasped, looking past Nashuhu to the star-filled sky above. "Tell Takakota." I followed. To the end. His eyes fixed on eternity as his final breath escaped. A profound silence fell over the gathering. Black Knife stepped into the sacred circle, kneeling to examine the forbidden's blade and the pouch of poison. When he rose, his face was carved from stone, but his eyes held a father's pain and a leader's clarity. "A circle has revealed truth," he declared, his voice carrying to all assembled. "Takakota betrayed the Wind Riders. He plotted war for his own gain and poisoned our waters to blame the Apache." The pronouncement sent ripples of shock through the warriors. Some protested, unwilling to believe that one of their own, especially the war chief's nephew, could commit such treachery. Others nodded grimly, pieces falling into place that had seemed strange before. "The poison is the same," the tribe's medicine man confirmed, examining all 3 pouches side by side. "Made from the yellow root that grows by our summer grounds. Not Apache medicine." Nashuhu stood silent, blood running down his arm from the combat wound, his face solemn in victory. He had not fought for glory or revenge, but for truth, and that truth had cost 2 Comanche lives. "My daughter lives because of your mercy," Black Knife said, addressing him directly. "And many more may live because of your courage in coming. Here," he looked around at his assembled warriors, "the Apache are not our enemy in this matter. The enemy was among us, and now lies dead." Tani moved to Nashuju's side, supporting him as fatigue and blood loss began to take their toll. "He needs medicine," she said to her father. Black Knife nodded. "Take him to my lodge. Our healer will tend his wounds." To the gathered warriors, he raised his voice again. "The Wind Riders will not make war based on lies and poison. We return to our territories at dawn." Relief washed over Nashuhu. "Face, and my people, they prepare for battle even now. I will send riders under the white buckskin," Black Knife promised, "to tell them what we have learned here tonight." As warriors dispersed, discussing in hushed tones the night's revelations, Tani helped Nashuhu toward her father's lodge. The vial of poison that had nearly caused a war between their peoples lay in the dust of the combat circle, its deadly purpose exposed, its power broken by truth and courage. "You fought well," she said quietly. "Few could have defeated Tall Bull." "I didn't defeat him," Nashuhu replied, wincing as his wounded arm throbbed. "His own actions did." In the east, the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon. A new day approached, one that might, against all odds, see peace rather than war between ancient enemies. Morning light bathed the valley of red stones as black. Knife and 3 of his most trusted warriors rode under the white buckskin flag toward the Apache encampment. Beside them rode Nashuhu, his wounded arm bound with healing herbs, and Tani, representing her father's goodwill. The small party moved slowly through territory that hours earlier had been prepared for bloodshed. In the Apache camp, tension remained high despite the Comanche peace delegation. Greyhawk and the tribal elders waited at the boundary line, their faces showing cautious skepticism. Behind them, warriors stood ready, arrows nocked, though not yet aimed. They still prepare for treachery, Tani observed quietly. As do your father's men, Nashuhu replied, nodding toward the wind riders who followed at a discreet distance, ready to ride to their chief's defense if needed. Black Knife raised, his hand in the universal peace sign as they approached the Apache. Leadership. I come to speak with the wisdom keepers of the canyon people, he called in the trade, language common to both tribes. Greyhawk stepped forward, his ancient face revealing nothing. The Apache listen, he replied formally. What brings the wind? Rider chief to our boundary under the white buckskin? Truth, Black Knife said simply, and the prevention of needless death. For several tense moments, the leaders of the long-warring tribes measured each other across a few paces of dusty ground. Then Greyhawk nodded toward Nashuhu. Our scout returns with you. His words about treachery among your own people, they were true? They were, Black Knife confirmed grimly. My nephew poisoned our waters to blame your people. He sought war for his own gain, and nearly succeeded. Murmurs ran through the gathered Apache. Greyhawk silenced them with a raised hand. And how was this truth discovered? Through courage, Black Knife replied, glancing at Nashuhu. Your scout saved my daughter's life when my nephew tried to kill her as witness to his crime. Together, they brought proof before the sacred combat revealed all. Old Hummingbird, who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. The poison? He asked directly. Nashuhu nodded. The same as I showed you, Elder. Yellow root from the eastern plains, mixed with white clay. Takota's friend Tall Bull carried it also to plant near Apache waters. The revelation brought grim understanding to the Apache elders' faces. They conferred briefly, then Greyhawk turned back to Black Knife. If what you say is true, we stand at a moment our peoples have not known in many generations, a moment without the shadow of immediate war between us. A rare moment, Black Knife agreed, one we should honor appropriately. From his medicine pouch, he withdrew an object wrapped in soft buckskin, an intricately carved pipe made from red stone, decorated with symbols of both Apache and Comanche design. Many of the older warriors gasped in recognition. The two-tribe peace pipe, old, Hummingbird breathed. Not seen since my grandfather's time. My father's father kept it, Black Knife explained. Passed down since the time before our peoples divided. It has waited for this day. Greyhawk's weathered face showed genuine surprise, perhaps the first. True emotion he had revealed. We believed it lost when the Great Division came. Not lost, Black Knife said, only waiting. With ceremonial gravity, the Comanche chief unwrapped the ancient pipe. Its bowl was carved from red stone, found only in the sacred mountains to the north. Its stem adorned with eagle feathers and porcupine quills in patterns that spoke of shared heritage. Water divides us now, Black Knife said. Let us take the first step toward healing that division. He gestured toward the horizon, where the hidden canyon containing the sacred spring lay. My daughter tells me of waters with great healing power, waters your scout used to save her life. I propose we meet there, leaders of both tribes, to share water from the same source as our ancestors once did. The request was extraordinary. The sacred spring was the Apache's most closely guarded secret, never revealed to enemies. Yet Nashuhu had already broken that taboo to save Tani's life. Greyhawk looked to the other elders, reading their expressions. Then his eyes found Nashuhu. You brought an enemy to our most sacred place, he said, his voice neither accusing nor approving. What came of this breaking of our oldest law? Nashu's views straightened despite his wounds. Life, elder, truth, and now perhaps peace. The old warrior nodded slowly. Sometimes the oldest laws must bend so they do not break. He turned back to Black Knife. A new voice answered from the edge of the gathering. Because I carry the same poison, taken from your nephew's own hands. Nashuhu stood at the perimeter of the firelight, his hands raised to show he carried no weapons. Around his neck hung a white buckskin pouch, the universal symbol of a messenger under truce. His appearance caused an immediate reaction among the Comanche warriors. Bows were drawn, knives readied. "Hold," Black Knife commanded, though his own hand rested on his knife hilt. "This is the Apache who claims my daughter's life-debt?" "I am Nashuhu of the Canyon Apache," he replied calmly, though Tani could see the tension in his shoulders. One wrong move would mean his death. "I found your daughter wounded and abandoned. I took her to our sacred waters and healed her wounds. Only later did we discover the truth behind her attack." Black Knife's eyes narrowed. "Where are your people? Apache? Do they know you stand among their enemies on the eve of battle?" "They know," Nashuhu said, and Tani noticed with alarm the burn marks on his palm's angry red welts in the pattern of stones. "I have undergone the trial of fire to prove my truthfulness. My elders debate now whether to believe what I have told them about Takota's deception. And they let you come here?" Black Knife asked skeptically. "They gave me until dawn to prove." "My words," Nashuhu replied. "If I do not return, or if you attack, they will defend their territory believing you poisoned your own water to create a pretext for war." The boldness of this statement caused murmurs among the Wind Riders. Black Knife studied the Apache scout with new interest. Few men would walk willingly into an enemy camp with such a message. "You ask much, Apache," he said finally. "To believe my nephew, my sister's only son, was a traitor. To believe you saved my daughter out of mercy rather than calculation. To call off a war already set in motion." "I ask only for truth to be heard," Nashuhu replied. From the edge of the gathering, a warrior pushed forward Tall Bull, Takota's closest friend among the Wind Riders. His face was contorted with grief and rage. "This is a trick," he shouted. "Takota warned us the Apache would try to divide us with lies. Now they send this spy with a story about treachery and poison." "My cousin lies dead," Tani countered. "Would I kill my own blood without grave cause?" "Perhaps the Apache has bewitched you," Tall Bull suggested, his voice carrying to the assembled warriors. "Perhaps he used his medicine to cloud your mind, after finding you wounded." Other voices joined his, skepticism and suspicion feeding on long-held tribal hatred. Black Knife watched the dissent grow among his warriors, his face unreadable. "There is a way to settle this," he said finally, his voice cutting through the growing chaos. "The ancient way. Combat in the sacred circle." A hush fell over the gathering. The combat circle was rarely invoked a tradition older than the split between Apache and Comanche, where disputed matters were settled through single combat between champions. "Who stands for the accusation against Takota?" Black Knife asked formally. Without hesitation, Nashuhu stepped forward. "I do." "And who defends Takota's honor?" Tall Bull moved into the firelight. "I do, and I will take pleasure in killing this Apache liar." Black Knife nodded grimly. "Then let the circle be drawn according to the old ways. The matter will be decided before dawn." Warriors hurried to clear a large space near the central fire. Using white stones, they created a perfect circle 30 paces across. 4 gaps were left in the stone boundary, facing the cardinal directions north, south, east, and west. In the center, a smaller circle was drawn for the combatants to begin dot as preparations continued. Tani approached Náshŭ her face tight with concern. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "The life debt protects you. You could leave now." "And your people would still march to war against mine," he replied. "No, this is the only way to make them listen." She glanced at his burned hands. "The trial of fire. Your people didn't believe you either. They will, if I return with proof." His eyes met hers. "And if I don't return, old Hummingbird will speak for me. The truth will be heard, one way or another." The significance of his choice wasn't lost on her. He was risking everything not just for his people, but for hers as well. For peace between ancient enemies. Tall Bull is strong, she warned. And he was devoted to Takakota. "I don't need to be stronger," Nashuhu said quietly, "only more determined." Black Knife approached, ceremonial paint in his hands. "It is time, Apache. You know the rules of the circle?" "I know them," Nashuhu confirmed. "No weapons, but those provided. Combat until one yields or can no longer fight. The circle's boundary may not be crossed except in death. These rules are sacred to both our peoples," Black Knife said, studying him closely. "Older than our division." As the war chief painted ritual symbols on his chest and face white for truth, red for courage, black for the spirit world that watched, Nashuhu felt a strange calm descend. This moment had been coming since he first found Tani wounded in the canyon. Perhaps longer, perhaps, since his sister was taken, since he chose the path of healer rather than pure warrior. Across the circle, Tall Bull received his own markings, his massive frame dwarfing the aging medicine man who applied them. He was younger than Nashuhu by several years, but broader, with the powerful build of a dedicated warrior. When the preparations were complete, both men entered the circle from opposite sides, standing face to face in the central ring. A tribal elder presented each with identical knives, stone blades, bound to wooden handles with rawhide, the ancient weapon style used since before metal came to their peoples. Around them, hundreds of wind riders gathered to witness the combat, their faces solemn in the firelight. Among them, Tani stood beside her father, her eyes never leaving Nashuhu. "Let truth be revealed through courage," Black Knife intoned, raising his arms to the star-filled sky. "Let the spirits guide the worthy hand." A drum began to beat a slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat. The combat circle was ready. 2 men, 2 truths, one outcome that would determine the fate of their peoples. The first clash of stone knives sent sparks flying in the firelight. Tall Bull attacked with the direct aggression of youth and strength, forcing Nashuhu to give ground immediately. The Apache scout moved fluidly, his years of traversing difficult terrain evident in his balance and footwork. Around them, the wind riders watched in tense silence, broken only by the steady rhythm of the ceremonial drum. This was more than a fight between 2 men. It was a judgment, a revelation of truth through combat, as their ancestors had practiced for untold generations. Tall Bull pressed his advantage, his greater size and power, allowing him to drive Nashuhu steadily backward toward the circle's edge. "You will die for your lies, Apache," he snarled, slashing in a wide arc that would have opened Nashuju's throat had it connected. But Nashuhu was not trying to win through direct confrontation. He dodged and weaved, conserving his strength, studying his opponent's patterns. Tall Bull fought with emotion, grief for his friend Takakota, hatred for the Apache, desire to prove himself before the gathered wind riders. Emotion made him strong but predictable. "Takakota betrayed both our peoples," Nashuhu said calmly as he sidestepped another powerful thrust. "He poisoned your water to start a war that would kill many, including your chief." Silence. Tall Bull lunged again, nearly catching Nashuju's side with his blade. "Takakota was like a brother to me. He would never harm our people. Did he speak often of becoming war chief? Of the glory that would come after this battle?" The question struck home. Momentary doubt flickered across Tall Bull's face before rage replaced it. You know nothing of him. His next attack was wild, unbalanced. Nashuhu saw his opening and moved inside Tall Bull's guard, landing a solid blow to the warrior's ribs before dancing away. First blood went to the Apache. Tahne. He watched the combat with clenched fists, every muscle in her body tight with tension. She knew Nashuhu fought not just for his life, but for the future of both their peoples. Beside her, her father, observed with the calculating eye of a veteran warrior, assessing each man's skill and spirit. The Apache fights with unusual restraint, Black Knife noted quietly. He seeks to convince, not to kill. Because he speaks truth, Tani replied. He has no hatred for Tall Bull. The combat continued, the two men circling each other in the sacred space. Nashuhu's strategy was becoming clear. He was wearing down his younger, stronger opponent, letting Tall Bull's emotions drain his energy through wild attacks. But it was a dangerous game. One solid blow from the powerful Comanche warrior could end the fight instantly. Twice Tall Bull's blade came within a finger's width of finding its mark. The third time, it sliced across Nashuhu's upper arm, drawing a ribbon of blood that glistened black in the firelight. First real blood to Tall Bull, murmured the warriors around the circle. The tide of the combat seemed to be turning. Emboldened by his success, Tall Bull pressed harder, driving Nashuhu toward the western edge of the circle. You will die knowing you failed, he taunted. Our warriors will still destroy your people. Nashuhu's foot slipped on a patch of loose earth, and he stumbled. Tall Bull saw his chance and lunged for the killing blow. But instead of trying to regain his balance, Nashuhu dropped completely, rolling beneath the attack and coming up behind his overextended opponent.